She laughed at humanity. Now she's protecting a human child, like her own asterisk, the moment Captain Jake, Morrison's transport ship, tore through Zelara Prime's atmosphere. He knew death was coming fast. The alien plasma cannons had shredded his vessel's hull, leaving him with nothing but emergency thrusters and a prayer. His cargo hold contained something precious beyond measure: 30 human children, orphans from the destroyed colony of New Terra, being evacuated to safety. The crash was violent. Metal screamed against alien stone as the ship carved a burning scar across the crystalline landscape. When the dust settled, Jake found himself staring up at towering beings with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury. The Zellerans had found him. Commander Vexara stood over the wreckage, her elegant form draped in flowing robes that seemed to shift between colors. She was the most feared military leader in the Zalaron Empire, known for her tactical brilliance and her complete disdain for lesser species. Her lips curved into a cold smile as she examined the human survivor. "So this is what passes for intelligence among the humans," she said, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species. "Pathetic creatures who crash into our world like debris." Her soldiers laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm not Jake struggled to his feet, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. "They're children," he gasped. "Please, they're just children." Vexara's expression didn't change. "Children of a species that dared to expand into our territory. Children who will grow up to be warriors against us." She gestured to her soldiers. "Execute them all." But as the Zellerans moved toward the wreckage, small voices began to emerge from the twisted metal. Children, scared and crying, calling out for help. Jake watched in horror as the soldiers raised their weapons. "Wait," came a tiny voice. A little girl, no more than 6 years old, stumbled from the wreckage. Her name was Emma, and she had the brightest blue eyes Jake had ever seen. She looked up at Vexara without fear, only curiosity. "Why are you so pretty?" Emma asked, reaching out toward the alien commander's shimmering robes. For a moment, something flickered across Vexara's face. Confusion, perhaps even surprise. No enemy had ever called her pretty. No one had ever looked at her with such innocent wonder. "I am your executioner, child," Vexara said, though her voice had lost some of its edge. Emma tilted her head. "What's an executioner?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Vexara found herself looking into those bright blue eyes, seeing not the future enemy she had expected, but something she had never encountered before: pure, untainted innocence. "Someone who ends lives," Vexara replied, her weapon trembling slightly in her hand. "That sounds sad," Emma said. "Why would you want to do something sad?" The other children began emerging from the wreckage, drawn by Emma's fearless example. They gathered around the alien soldiers, not with terror, but with the natural curiosity of youth. One boy asked about the soldiers' silver skin. Another marveled at their technology. Vex single quotes era felt something crack inside her chest. These weren't the savage beasts her propaganda had described. These were just children, innocent and wondering, seeing beauty where others saw only threat. "Commander," one of her soldiers whispered, "your orders?" Vexara looked at Emma, who was now trying to comfort a crying infant. The human child's small hands were gentle, her voice soft and soothing. There was something in that moment that reminded Vexara of her own lost youth, before war had hardened her heart into crystal. "We take them to the detention center," she said finally, for questioning. Her soldiers exchanged glances. They had expected immediate execution, not capture. But orders were orders. As they loaded the children into transport pods, Emma looked back at Vexara. "Will you visit us?" she asked. "I want to learn more about your pretty clothes." Vexara said nothing, But something deep inside her alien heart began to stir. Something dangerous and unfamiliar. Something that felt almost like hope. The detention center on Zelara Prime was a marvel of alien architecture, with walls that pulsed with soft bioluminescent light and floors that adjusted to each inhabitant's needs. The human children were placed in a communal cell, though it resembled a comfortable dormitory more than a prison. Vexara told herself she was only coming to interrogate them, to learn about human military strategies and weaknesses. But as she entered the cell, she found the children had created something unexpected, a small classroom. Emma sat in the center, surrounded by the other children, telling them a story about Earth. Her voice painted pictures of blue skies and green forests, of animals called dogs that loved unconditionally, and of something called rain that fell from the sky to nourish the world. And then, Emma was saying, the little seed pushed through the dark soil and became a beautiful flower that made everyone smile. The children listened with rapt attention, their faces glowing with wonder. Even in captivity, they had found a way to create beauty and hope. "What is the purpose of this gathering?" Vexara asked, her voice cutting through the storytelling. Emma looked up, her face brightening. "Commander Vexara, we're sharing stories about our homes. Would you like to hear one?" "I am here to question you about human military installations," Vexara replied coldly. A boy named Tommy, perhaps 8 years old, raised his hand. "What's a military installation?" Vexara found herself at a loss. How could she explain war to beings who seemed to know only peace? "Places where soldiers prepare for battle," she said. "Oh," Tommy said, "we don't know about those. We lived on a farming colony. We grew food and took care of animals." "Farming?" Vexara's voice betrayed her surprise. "Your species conquers worlds too. Grow food?" Emma nodded enthusiastically. "My mom grew the most beautiful tomatoes. She said they were red like tiny suns. And Mrs. Peterson had chickens that laid eggs every morning." The innocence of it struck Vexara like a physical blow. These children spoke not of conquest or domination, but of nurturing life. They described their parents as farmers and teachers. "Not warriors, but your ships," Vexara pressed. "Your weapons. Surely you were trained for war." A girl named Lily, no more than 7, looked confused. "The only ships we saw were the ones that brought supplies and took away our food to share with hungry people on other worlds." Sharing, Vexara repeated the word like it was foreign to her tongue. "That's what humans do," Emma said simply. "We share what we have so everyone can be happy." Over the following days, Vexara found herself returning to the detention center. Again and again. Each visit was supposed to be an interrogation, but instead became something else entirely. The children taught her human games, showed her how to make paper flowers from recycled materials, and shared more stories of their peaceful lives. Tommy showed her how to play a game called rock, paper, scissors, laughing when she chose rock every time. Lily taught her a song about friendship that made no sense, strategically, but somehow filled Vexara's chest with warmth. Emma, the fearless little leader, began asking Vexara questions in return. About Zelaron culture, about their beautiful cities, about whether they had families and friends. "Do you have children?" Emma asked one day. Vexara hesitated. I had a daughter once. She died in the war." "I'm sorry," Emma said, her small hand reaching through the energy barrier to touch Vexara's. "What was her name?" "Zaralyn," Vexara whispered, the name painful on her lips. "That's a pretty name," Emma said. "I bet she was beautiful like you." Something cracked inside Vexara's chest. No one had mentioned her daughter's name in years. No one had dared to speak of her loss with such gentle compassion. "She was," Vexara said, her voice breaking slightly. "She was everything bright and good in the universe. Then she was like us, Emma said with the simple wisdom of a child. All children are bright and good, aren't they? Vexara looked at the 30 human children surrounding her, their faces filled with the same innocent light that had once shone in her daughter's eyes. For the first time in years, she began to question everything she thought she knew about humanity. High Command summoned Vexara on the 7th day of her interrogations. The War Council chamber was an imposing space of black crystal and silver metal, where the fate of worlds was decided. General Corthan, the supreme military leader of the Zelaron Empire, stood before a holographic display showing the locations of human colonies. Commander Vexara, his voice boomed like thunder across metal. Your reports on the human prisoners have been inadequate. Vexara stood at attention, her heart racing. Sir, I have been conducting thorough psychological evaluations of the subjects. Psychological evaluations? Corthan's silver eyes flashed with anger. We need strategic intelligence, not bedtime stories about farming and friendship. The other commanders around the table laughed, but Vexara felt heat rise in her cheeks. Sir, I believe there may have been a misunderstanding about human nature. These children show no signs of military training or aggressive tendencies. Children grow into soldiers, Corthan snarled. And soldiers must be eliminated before they become threats. Execute them all, today. The word hit Vexara like a plasma bolt to the chest. Sir, I request permission to continue my research. These humans may be valuable for prisoner exchanges, or your request is denied. Corthan cut her off. The execution will take place at sunset. You will carry it out personally as a test of your loyalty to the Empire. Vexara's world tilted. In her mind, she saw Emma's bright blue eyes, Tommy's infectious laughter, Lily's gentle songs. She saw 30 innocent souls who had never known hatred, who spoke of their parents with love and their enemies with curiosity. I understand, sir, she heard herself say, though her voice sounded distant and hollowed out as she left the chamber. Vexara's mind raced. She had hours to decide between her duty to the Empire and something she was only beginning to understand, her duty to protect the innocent. She found herself walking toward the detention center, her steps heavy with the weight of impossible choices. The children greeted her with their usual enthusiasm, unaware that she carried their death sentence. Commander Vexara, Emma called out, running to the energy barrier. We made something for you. The children had woven together strips of fabric from their clothing to create a small banner. In crude but heartfelt letters, it read, Thank you for being our friend. Vexara's breath caught in her throat. Friend. When had she ever been anyone's friend? When had anyone looked at her with such pure affection? We know you're sad sometimes, Emma said softly. When you talk about your daughter, your eyes get all watery. So we wanted to make you something to remember, that you have friends who care about you. The words shattered something inside Vexara. These children, facing an uncertain fate in alien captivity, had spent their time trying to comfort her. They had seen her pain and responded with kindness. Emma, Vexara said, her voice breaking, I need to tell you something. But before she could speak, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed as automated voices announced, Execution protocol initiated. All personnel to designated positions. The children looked confused and frightened. Emma pressed her small hand against the barrier, looking up at Vexara with trust and hope. What's happening? Emma asked. Vexara looked at the children, at Emma's bright eyes, at Tommy's worried face, at Lily clutching her homemade doll. She thought of her own daughter, Zaralyn, who had been just as innocent, just as full of light, and she made a choice that would change everything. We're leaving, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her heart. All of us. Right now. She deactivated the energy barrier and opened the cell door. "Children, listen to me carefully. We're going on an adventure, but we need to be very quiet and very brave. Can you do that?" Emma nodded solemnly. "We can be brave. Humans are good at being brave when we need to protect each other." As Vexara led the children through the facility's back corridors, she realized that Emma was right. Humans were good at being brave. And perhaps, she thought as she guided them toward the transport bay, they were teaching her to be brave too. The transport ship Celestial Wind was a sleek vessel designed for stealth operations. But Vexara had never imagined using it to smuggle 30 human children to safety. As she powered up the engines, her hands trembled with the magnitude of what she was doing. "Where are we going?" Emma asked, her small voice cutting through the hum of the ship's systems. "Somewhere safe," Vexara replied, though she honestly didn't know where that might be. Every world in the Zalaran Empire would be searching for them within hours. The children clustered around the viewport, their faces pressed against the transparent aluminum as Zalara Prime fell away beneath them. For beings who had lived their entire lives on the ground, the sight of space was magical. "Look," Tommy pointed at the stars. "They're like tiny diamonds scattered across black velvet." Vexara found herself smiling despite the danger. Even in their fear, the children found wonder in the universe around them. It was a gift she had forgotten she possessed, but their escape was short-lived. Within an hour, Zalaran pursuit ships appeared on the horizon, their sleek forms cutting through space like silver arrows. The communication system crackled to life. "Commander Vexara," came Corthan's voice, cold and furious. "You will return to base immediately and surrender the prisoners, or you will be branded a traitor to the Empire." Vexara looked at the children, who had grown quiet and afraid. Emma moved closer to her, slipping her small hand into Vexara's larger one. "We trust you," Emma whispered. "Whatever happens, we trust you." Those words gave Vexara the strength she needed. She activated the ship's communication system. "General Corthan," she said, her voice steady and clear, "I formally refuse your order. These children are under my protection." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Corthan's voice returned, filled with deadly promise. "Then you have chosen to die with them." The first plasma bolts lit up the darkness around their ship. Vexara threw the Celestial Wind into evasive maneuvers, but she was one ship against a fleet. The children held on to each other, their fear evident, but their trust in her unshaken. "Can we help?" Emma asked, still holding Vexara's hand. "Just stay brave," Vexara replied, pouring all her skill into piloting the ship through the deadly gauntlet. But then something unexpected happened. As the Zalaran ships closed in for the killing blow, new vessels appeared on the scanner. Ships with unfamiliar configurations and energy signatures. "This is Captain Reynolds of the human vessel Defiant," a voice came over the communication system. "Zalaran Commander, we're detecting human life signs on your ship. Please identify yourself." Vexara's heart pounded. A human military vessel, the very thing she had been taught to fear. But Emma squeezed her hand and said, "Those are the good guys. They'll help us." "Captain Reynolds," Vexara transmitted, "I am Commander Vexara of the Zalaran Empire. I have 30 human children aboard my ship, and I am seeking to return them to safety." There was a pause, then Captain Reynolds' voice returned, filled with suspicion. "Commander, you'll understand if we find that hard to believe. The Zalaran Empire has been at war with humanity for 5 years. Please," Vexara said, and for the first time in her life, she begged. "They're just children. They don't deserve to die because of a war they never chose." Emma moved to the communication panel. "Captain Reynolds? This is Emma. Commander Vexara saved us. She's not like the other bad guys. She's our friend." The innocent voice of a human child changed everything. Within minutes, human ships were forming a protective barrier around the celestial wind, their weapons trained on the Zalaron pursuit fleet. "This is Captain Reynolds to the Zalaron fleet," came the transmission. "You will not fire on that ship. Those children are under our protection now." Corthan's voice crackled with rage. "You dare protect a traitor? She has betrayed her own species." "No," Emma said, her voice carrying across the communication channel to both fleets. "She chose to protect children. That doesn't make her a traitor. That makes her a hero." The words hung in the vacuum of space, a challenge to everything both species believed about each other. Here was a human child, defending the alien who had once been ordered to kill her. Here was a Zalaron commander, choosing protection over duty. "Stand down, Zalaron fleet," Captain Reynolds commanded. "These children are going home." As the human ships escorted the celestial wind to safety, Vexara realized that everything had changed. She was no longer a commander of the Zalaron Empire. She was something new, something unprecedented, a bridge between two worlds, protected by the very beings she had once sought to destroy. The human refugee station Haven's Rest was a marvel of practical engineering, built to house the displaced children of the war. As Vexara's ship docked, she felt the weight of what she had done settling on her shoulders. She was an alien among humans, a former enemy seeking sanctuary. Captain Reynolds met them at the airlock, his weathered face showing surprise at his first close look at a Zalaron. He was a man in his 40s, with kind eyes and premature gray in his hair, the marks of someone who had seen too much war. "Commander." "Vexara," he said formally, and paused as Emma ran to him. "Captain Reynolds, this is Commander Vexara. She's the one who saved us. She's really nice, and she's sad because she lost her daughter, but she's brave and she tells good stories." Reynolds looked at Vexara with new eyes. "Is that so?" "The children exaggerate my virtues," Vexara said quietly. "I simply chose not to follow an order I could not morally execute." "That's not what the intelligence reports say," Reynolds replied. "According to our sources, you've been declared a traitor by your own people. There's a death sentence on your head." Emma tugged at Reynolds' sleeve. "Can she stay with us, please? She doesn't have anywhere else to go, and she's family now." Family. The word hit Vexara like a physical blow. She had not been part of a family since Zaralyn died. Over the following weeks, something extraordinary happened. The children who had been scattered across the station began to gather around Vexara. They sought her out for comfort when they had nightmares, for stories when they couldn't sleep, for guidance when they felt lost. She found herself teaching them about Zalaron culture, showing them the beauty of her people's art and music. In return, they taught her human games, shared their memories of Earth, and slowly, carefully, began to heal her wounded heart. Emma was the catalyst for it all. She appointed herself as Vexara's unofficial translator, explaining human customs and emotions with the patience of someone far older than her 6 years. Humans hug when they're sad or happy or scared. Emma explained one day when Vexara seemed particularly lost. "Do Zelarans hug?" We did," Vexara said softly. "Before the war. Before we forgot how to be gentle." Emma wrapped her small arms around Vexara's waist. "I'm hugging you now, so you remember." The embrace was simple, innocent, and it shattered the last of Vexara's emotional barriers. She knelt down and hugged Emma back, tears streaming down her silver cheeks. "I remember," she whispered. "I remember how to love." News of their story spread throughout human space. The Zalaron commander, who had defected to save human children, became a symbol of hope. Peace activists on both sides held up their example as proof that the war could end. But not everyone was pleased. Zalaron assassination squads began hunting for Vexara, while human hardliners questioned whether she could be trusted. The children, however, remained her fiercest defenders. When a human admiral suggested that Vexara should be moved to a more secure facility, Emma organized what she called a protection circle. All 30 children surrounded Vexara, holding hands and declaring that they wouldn't let anyone take their friend away. "She's not a prisoner," Emma said with the authority of someone who had faced down armed soldiers. "She's our mom now." The word mom made Vexara's heart stop. She looked at the children surrounding her, these brave, loving beings who had lost their families, but still had room in their hearts for an alien who had once been their enemy. "Emma," she said softly, "I am not your mother. I am a different species, a former enemy of your people." Emma looked up at her with those bright blue eyes that had first cracked Vexara's armor. Being a mom isn't about what species you are or you used to be. It's about loving someone and taking care of them and never giving up on them. That's what you do for us. The other children nodded in agreement. Tommy added, "You sing us to sleep when we have nightmares." Lily said, "You teach us new things every day." Another child chimed in, "You make us feel safe." Vexara looked around at their faces, seeing not human children, but simply her children. The barriers of species and war had dissolved in the face of something more powerful, the love between a mother and her children. "Then yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I am your mom, and I will protect you, love you, and never give up on you, no matter what comes." As the children cheered and hugged her, Vexara realized that she had found something she never expected, a new family, a new purpose, and a new hope for the future. The war between humans and Zellerans would continue, but here, in this small corner of space, love had already won. And sometimes that's how peace begins, not with treaties or surrender, but with a mother's love for her children, regardless of the species that bore them. In the end, Vexara had not just saved 30 human children. They had saved her, teaching her that family is not about blood or species, but about the choice to love and protect each other, no matter what the universe throws at you. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.